You're welcome back. Video 17C, squaring the wind circle. Traditionally we have 6,300 megawatts of a mix of fast plant to cover peaks, heavy duty coal and oil plant and heavy oil plant, which is all very efficient. And the faster component of that wouldn't be as efficient. It would be combined cycle gas turbines and open cycle gas turbines. But anyway, they couldn't leave it alone, so we added to it for this wind 2,200 of fast acting plant, which is about half as efficient as the slow burning plant up here, right? So we've added more inefficient plant. We've added 3,400 of wind energy and growing. We'll probably add another 1,000 of that. But we've already added 5,600 megawatts, which brings the total up to 11,900. So 5,600 is what we've added to save the planet in order to have green energy. So it's almost twice. Now we're going to look at the concept of interconnecting, because everyone says, oh, should we export and do this and that and the other. So at the moment our exporting capacity is 500 megawatts versus the north-south, east-west interconnector. Not the north-south interconnector, the east-west interconnector. It's 500 megawatt capacity. It's a direct current supply under the ocean. So on a windy day, only 300 of that can be wind. So if we look up the dashboard and you see 500 being exported, 200 of that is fuel. And if it's not a windy day, all of it could be fuel. So on a calm day, 500 would be fuel. On a windy day, 200 is fuel. Okay? So that's non-synchronous power. That is the same as wind energy, and it still needs 40% fossil fuel plant with a spinning plant with inertia in it to back it up. And if it's exported to Britain, it's the same. It needs the same over there. Now, a few years ago, there was a big plan. This is about 2010, 2011, by Energy Minister Pat Rabbitte, to export wind electricity to Britain. Now, essentially what you're going to see here is going to confuse you, and that's because they hadn't a clue what they were doing. Sorry. I moved the camera, that's okay. They hadn't a clue what they were doing. Now, the idea was 300 megawatts, that was the nominal capacity. All to be installed in the Irish Midlands, where the load factor is no better than 21%. We're giving it 22 for the sake of this. Now, if they were exporting 3,000 this very day, 1,200 would have to be fuel, generated in fuel plants here in Ireland with imported fuel, with the emissions credited here in Ireland. So on a totally calm day, 3,000 megawatts would be fuel, because we presume the British would want a constant supply. So we'd have to have a whole new power stations built for fossil fuel to supply this when there be no wind, which can be a lot of the time. There was no wind for most of the summer last year, 2018, right? So on the other hand, if they decided to export 3,000 megawatts of wind energy, if they actually installed 3,000, we'd have to build 1,200 to back it up, and that'd be 4,200 extra generating capacity, right? And we'll see for that 400,200 how much anyone would get for it. So we'd have to build all this capacity. The wind companies would build this. We'd have to build this to back it up, and we'd have to pay for this. They'd get this free, as they do always, of course. Now, if we look at this, the 3,000 by 8,766 hours in the year gives us 26,000 megawatt hours in a year, multiplied by, we'll say they got 75 euros. We say they got the same as wind currently gets. So we'll say they got 75 euros. Sorry for a minute. Say they got 75 euros, and so that would bring in 1.9 billion euros into Ireland. So wind would have generated 22% of that, assuming that the total is 3,000. Wind could only generate 22% of that if they had this capacity. So over the year they'd get 22% of the load factor in this. They'd only get 22%, and so they'd get 434 million euros. 434 million euros for that. Now we all know their costs would far outweigh that. So that's what they'd get, 434 million euros for generating the electricity to go over to Britain. But of course, as we see, making money is not the name of the game at all. It's building it and getting rid of it quick as possible. Okay? So we then would generate 78% of this. So we would get 1.54 billion. Now, I know you're probably going to get confused here. And in fact, being confused shows you how ridiculous this is. If we were sending 3,000 megawatts per year, multiplied by 8766 megawatt hours, the wind speeds in the Midlands are only enough to give 22% of that. But there has to be 40% of that Irish fossil plant generated. So there's two separate concepts. The maximum amount of this going over is 1,800 wind and 1,200 fossil fuel. That's in the ideal situation. But in reality, the wind won't blow. There won't be enough windy days. So in fact, if we have that amount of wind turbines, only 22% of it will actually generate to its full capacity. So all that will reap in, multiplied by 75, is 434 million euros for the wind companies. And we will have generated 78% of it, and we'll get 1.5 billion euros for bringing in fossil fuel into Ireland, generating electricity and exporting it through 6 times the interconnection capacity we currently have. So we'll then have to pay for the fuel to generate this, and I won't go to the bother or go to the trouble of figuring out how much it'll be. But at a ballpark there, I pick with transmission and all, there'll be 800,000 costs of fuel and all that, and you might have 3/4 of a billion euros left. Now that is highly subjective. Please don't take that, because we are not making money generating electricity at the minute by fossil fuel and selling it to the consumers in Ireland. So I can't see how we can generate electricity here and sell it to England and make money. Okay, this 800 is not very good. I would think of this 1.4 billion, you'd probably have to have costs maybe more than that, maybe 1.3 billion, and all that'd be left is a few hundred million, big pippins. So this, you know, it's very, very minimal. It's just being extra cautious, letting them have every benefit, saying that 800,000 would be the cost of the fuel and the maintenance and all of that. So it'll be a lot more. But you see, 1.54 billion would come in, and we have to pay everything. We have to pay for everything except the capital cost of the wind farms, but we pay for them through tax relief of 40%, and the wind farms will get 434 million for their contribution, which is somewhat limited. Okay, now 3,000 megawatts multiplied by 8766 is 26 million megawatt hours. Multiplied by that, give 1.9. That's just the same again. Wind companies get 434, and we divide that by 22, and we see we get 1.54. I'm just showing you that to show you the figures. And so we have 1.9 billion coming in. We're not sure of the cost, but it's going to be high. But 78%. 78% of this electricity is fossil fuel generated, and therefore 78% of the emissions is credited to us. This is key. So while this wonderful planet-saving scheme would be going on, the Minister would be telling us we're not reaching our targets, and I, as a farmer, would be asked to dump and get rid and cull my cows because of this stupid scheme that we're generating electricity to supply English consumers. You're confused, I know, and that's because no one in their right mind would come up with such an idea. So we see that the emissions will be 78% of 26 million, and we don't know what that is. I might calculate that at another stage, but we have a lot of emissions added to our targets, and that also this 26 million megawatt hours is non-synchronous. When it's brought into Britain, it can only form 60%. They'll have to generate fossil fuel energy of 60%, 40% to go with it. So the ratio When they get that across into Wales, there will have to be 60% of this and 40% fossil fuel power in Britain as well. So it's the reverse of here. We get in interconnection, we have to add to it with fossil fuel generation of 40%. If they take ours in, they have to add to it 40% over there. So that shows you they can't use this. What are they actually saving? Again, you're getting slightly confused. I would say no harm, because this is so ridiculous, right? So now, we see then that on a calm day, So on a calm day, all of the energy brought in from here to Britain would be fossil fuel, and on a windy day, that there I think should be windy day. That's not calm. On a windy day, 1200 of our power of it would have to be generated here from fossil fuel. That's on a windy day when the output is when the wind is blowing well. So that should be windy. So when it's windy, we would have to add 1200, 40% for every 60% of wind going over. So it's the same in Britain. It's the counter of one's the opposite to the other. It's the same in Britain. All of this power is non-synchronous, and therefore the idea that it's great to saving the planet has to be taken in that context. Now, one of the things here is in this. We'll bring this down is, so we have 11.9 at the moment. We'd have to add 1.2 to balance the exporting of the wind energy. That would bring our capacity up to 12.1. And then we have 3,000 of wind, bringing it to 15.1, right? So we have 15,100 when we only need 6.3 for our own. Now, so we would be subsidising the British consumer by erecting and building all these backup plants for this, right? And how exactly the mechanism for paying the wind farms would work, I don't know. I don't know would it work. But I'm building up to something here. What I did. Now, remember, the net benefit of this seems to be that the wind companies will get 443 million per year. And it wouldn't even come close to paying their costs. Now, I want to just tell you, you probably find that a bit confusing, and this is because this is a Ponzi scheme, and all Ponzi schemes are confusing. So I hope that you see that people say, some of the supporters say, he's a bit raven there, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, how do you explain something which is so absolutely mad? But anyway, I met Pat Rabbit in Dublin, and he turned blue at the idea of a lad like me telling him he couldn't count. And he virtually hit me. And he did. Well, he didn't hit me now, to be true. He had two other people with him. But he was vexed. He was wicked. He was. And he just got up and he walked out. So anyway, what did the British do? Didn't they come along and announce an SCA? Now, this SCA in Ireland counts for nothing. It means nothing. This is Ireland. And we don't keep the law. But in Britain, Gregory Campbell is a QC, Queen's Counsel, and he has written a book on the SCA, and he actually carried out an assessment of An Bord Pleanála. And but in this book on the SCA, he takes it seriously. And would you believe that the British House of Lords takes the SCA seriously enough? They act a bit like the European Court, and I don't know have any of their decisions been overturned, but they believe there should be a strategic environmental assessment. But didn't the British government announce some type of a consultation? I don't know, was it an SCA or not, and didn't some of the people in my organisation, or some of the groups throughout the country, or me, or somebody noticed it anyway, and didn't I make my submission nicely? And I'd say I was probably one of the few to point out this. I'd say all the rest were all the glowing thing about it. And I just pointed out that in a brief little piece. And then I come along and I said there'll have to be an SCA because the people of Ireland will not in the long term bear the cost of subsidising Britain. It will eventually get out. And I pointed out about the building of the stations in the power stations in Ireland and all that, and how this was deeply flawed. And I know for an absolute fact, when Mr. Rabbit signed the Memorandum of Understanding, it was all a big handshake and fair fella well met and all. And shortly after, probably about 7 months, he instructed his department to ring his counterpart in Britain, and he couldn't get through. And they were ringing for days, and eventually they got through. And they got through to a person, a staffer there. And they told them that they'd check it out, and they went off and they got back again, and they rang back and they said, that's not going ahead. That's not happening. And I can imagine Rabbit's face when he heard that. Essentially, the British could count. I mean, after all, they were great engineers, and they built railways and they built everything. I mean, the British are very, very intelligent people, and they have great universities and all that. So anyway, I don't know, was it me or not, but I did point out the legal need to have an SCA. I think they kind of agreed with it. And of course, the minute the SCA would happen in England, I and several others would hit them like a ton of bricks, and our babies would be left with Rabbit caught in the headlights. This was a complete scam. This was an attempt to force Irish consumers to subsidise the British consumer and to give away their environment for this crazy idea. And in fairness to the British, and the way I worded it, I think they saw this. I think they just couldn't believe what they were reading. And maybe some staffer over there, Amber Rudd, I think, was involved. Not too intelligent. I think Andrea Leadsom is now the minister. She's a bit wiser. And Boris Johnson has said windmills wouldn't pull the skin of a rice pudding. But I wouldn't trust them. This could come back again. It certainly could, because I know for a fact the lobbying by the wind energy in the UK to get back the subsidies. The subsidies was cut 2 years ago for wind in England. So lobbying is very intensive, and government is under terrible pressure because they're giving them billions for their election. And the blackout the other day in London may help us a bit. But this nightmare has been put back for the moment at least. And I would say that I played a bit of an acting part in that, and if I did, I'm very, very proud of that. So 17 minutes, thank you very much. Again, you're going to find all these megawatts and things confusing. In the end of the day, we would have had to build 1,200 megawatts of fossil fuel plant, about 3 big gas plants to supply the backup for this 3,000 megawatts of crazy energy. And we would have to bear the environmental carbon taxes and everything on that, and it would go to our fines with the EU and everything. This is how the absolute contempt our government has for us as consumers. All I can do is bring it to your attention. Thank you very much, and see you back for the next video, whatever it'll be on, and we'll have something interesting. I think I might do one more clip 17D, and then maybe go off and do something different on the banking situation, because what's happening is crazy. Okay, thank you.